Hey friends, welcome back to Homestead on a Prayer. In case you're new here, my name's Jennifer. Welcome to my kitchen. Today we're going to be talking about some really quick and easy sheet pan dinners. Now, if you're anything like me, when fall comes along and your kids start school or just, the general busyness of life kind of catches up with you. I think it kind of does with all of us at some point. And sometimes you just need something really quick and really easy just to get dinner on the table. So I had kind of been thinking for myself, I homeschool my kids, and so when school starts, it's not really just about the school schedule. It's kind of, in some ways, it's kind of a lifestyle, kind of all-consuming. So there are times when I just need to throw something really quick and easy in the oven and be able to feed my family a delicious and healthy dinner. So I was thinking, those sheet pan dinners are really popular now and they seem really convenient. I should try making a couple of those and see how they are. And then I was thinking about it, and I was thinking that probably a lot of you guys are in the same type of situation that I am in. So I was like, why not make a video? I'm going to find 5 sheet pan dinners that look really delicious and really easy, and I'm going to try them out. I'm going to try them out with you guys for the very first time and let you know how they are as far as flavor most of all, but also as far as how easy they are to make and just how my family receives them. So today we're going to start with the very first one. We are going to be making lemon garlic chicken. This is going to be a chicken that's going to be marinated, unsurprisingly, in a lemon garlic marinade. We're going to cook it with some potatoes and some broccoli. We're going to cook it all together on one cookie sheet, and that is going to hopefully make for some easy cleanup and a quick and easy dinner. Now, over the course of the next couple weeks, I'll be filming this video as we make different dinners, and I'll kind of let you guys know what I think about each one. I am going to go ahead and link all of the recipes that I use in the video description. So if there's any of these that sound really interesting and you want to give them a try, go ahead and click the link in the video description. It'll take you right to the recipe. So right now, it's a little bit before dinner time. We have a couple hours till dinner. We're going to go ahead and get our marinade made up so that we can start our chicken marinating. So as I said, all these recipes I'll be making for the first time. So I'll be following along the recipe along with you guys. So we're going to start by making our marinade in our bowl here. We're going to start by measuring out 1/3 cup of olive oil and adding it to the bowl. I'm also going to go ahead and mince up some fresh garlic for this marinade. The recipe calls for 3 cloves of garlic. I have this 1 monster clove of garlic from my garden, so I'm going to count this as 2 and just mince up these here and add them right into our olive oil. So next we are going to need zest and juice from a lemon. So I'm going to go ahead and get this lemon zest up into the bowl first. Now the recipe actually calls for, it says 2 teaspoons of lemon zest. I'm not really measuring. I think that's about what you get from 1 lemon. And when you're cooking as opposed to baking, you have the option to be a little bit more flexible with your ingredients. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab all the yellow zest off this lemon here. Now the recipe calls for 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. I am actually going to measure that just because this lemon is a little small. I'm not sure how juicy it is, so I don't know how much I'm going to get from this lemon. If I'm not able to get 3 tablespoons from this lemon, I'm going to go ahead and add some more bottled lemon juice from my fridge. Just going to go ahead and roll out my lemon to try to release some of the juices. The 3 tablespoons is just under 1/4 cup. So I'm going to measure this in a liquid measurer, and we're just going to go for a little under 1/4 cup and see if we're able to get that much from this lemon. This lemon's being a little stubborn. I'm not sure how much juice it has, but we will find out. So we actually did get pretty close to 3 tablespoons of lemon juice from that lemon. I am going to go ahead and add a little bit more bottled lemon juice just to make sure we have the full amount. This lemon juice, which I really like, is actually fresh squeezed lemon juice. So it will still give us that good lemon flavor. So I really like to have something like that on hand for if I need fresh lemon juice and I don't have a lemon. So right into the marinade, that lemon juice and the zest goes. Next we're going to add a tablespoon of Dijon mustard. So next we need to go ahead and add some herbs and seasoning to this marinade. So we're going to need a teaspoon of dried basil. We're going to also need a teaspoon of dried oregano. This is oregano from my garden. And I didn't crush it completely, so I'm just going to kind of crush it as I add it into the marinade. We also need a teaspoon of onion powder. Got a half teaspoon here, so we'll measure that out twice. Then a teaspoon of salt and a teaspoon of pepper. I am going to go ahead and measure the salt. I have my pepper in a pepper mill, so I'm just going to grind it in and estimate about a teaspoon. Now a couple more flavorings here. We're going to need half a teaspoon of each of these. We're going to start with half a teaspoon of paprika, half a teaspoon of ground cumin, half a teaspoon of dried thyme leaves, and I went a little overboard on the thyme. I think that'll be okay. And half a teaspoon of sugar. I've used up a lot of measuring spoons, so we're going to go with a quarter teaspoon twice. So I'm going to go ahead and get this marinade all mixed up. And it definitely smells really flavorful and delicious, so hopefully it lives up to its smell. Once I've got it all mixed up, it's going to look like this. You can see pretty smooth, except you can see some chunks from the garlic in there. We are going to take a couple tablespoons of this marinade and we're going to set it aside to go on our vegetables later. Then we're going to put the rest of it in a Ziploc bag to marinate with the chicken. So I've just saved this much marinade to go on our potatoes. I'm going to go ahead and grab our chicken. I'm going to be using boneless, skinless chicken thighs. So I'm going to grab those out of the fridge and I'm going to set this in the fridge to sit until we're ready for it. So I've got here my boneless, skinless chicken thighs. I just stuck them in a nice large Ziploc bag. We're going to go ahead and pour our marinade in here. And then this is just going to go ahead and sit and marinate in the fridge for a few hours until it's time to cook dinner. So while our chicken marinates in the fridge, we're going to go ahead and make the Parmesan yogurt herb sauce that goes with this dish. So first we're going to head out to the garden and we are going to harvest some herbs. Right, so I hopped out to the garden real quick. I grabbed some fresh parsley and some fresh chives. So we're going to go ahead and get those chopped up for our yogurt sauce. Now I do want to mention that I am going to be making a half recipe of the yogurt sauce because I know that my son probably will not try it and I'm not sure if the rest of my family will be a big fan of it or not, but I am definitely going to try it because it sounds really good. So I'm going to make a half recipe. So the first thing we're going to need is to measure out half a cup of Greek yogurt into our bowl here. Next, we are going to need half a tablespoon of lemon juice. I used up my only fresh lemon making the marinade, so we're going to go ahead and use some more of this bottled lemon juice in here. Should be really delicious. Now I'm going to go ahead and chop up these fresh herbs that we just gathered. I'm not going to include the parsley stems. I'm just going to go ahead and pull the leaves off and use those. Now I'm not really measuring these. The recipe calls for a tablespoon of each, and as I said, I'm making half a recipe, but I'm not really going to be that picky about it. We're just going to chop up what we have here. I think this is probably a little bit generous with the herbs, but you know, that will be fine. I do not have any fresh dill in my garden right now, so I bought this freeze-dried dill at the grocery store. So we're going to go ahead and add half a tablespoon of freeze-dried dill to our sauce as well. I'm going to grate up about 2 tablespoons of Parmesan cheese. So we're going to be using fresh Parmesan, not the powdered stuff in the can. And I'm really just going to estimate with 2 tablespoons, probably a little smidge more than that. Okay, that looks good, I think. Let's go ahead and add this into our sauce. Now we need about 1/8 of a teaspoon each of cumin and salt, and since I'm having the recipe, it's going to be 1/16 of a teaspoon pepper, which honestly, I'm not really even going to measure. I'm just going to grate a couple little twists in there. I think the salt I'm just going to estimate as well. So let's go ahead and give this a mix. And then I think we'll do a little taste test of our yogurt Parmesan sauce, which I will say certainly looks delicious. So I think that's going to be a really nice garnish. Got our chicken, just a little taste. That's really good. I think that's going to go really well with the lemon and the garlic flavors, plus those nice pungent herbs that are going to be in our chicken dish. So I'm going to go ahead and get a cover on this and let this sit in our fridge too. So we've got our chicken marinating in the fridge. We've got our yogurt Parmesan sauce sitting in the fridge waiting for us. I'm just going to let all those flavors kind of marry together. I'm going to meet you back here when it's time to actually prep dinner and get dinner in the oven. So it's time to actually start cooking our dinner. I've preheated my oven to 400 degrees. I have my potatoes here. I have them chopped up into bite-sized pieces. I have a mix of red and gold potatoes. These are from my garden. So what we're going to do is we're going to toss these potatoes with about half of the marinade that we reserved that we didn't use for the chicken. And then we're going to just season them with a little bit of salt. And I'm going to put them on my baking sheet. I've gone ahead to make cleanup even easier and lined my baking sheet with a little bit of parchment paper. You could definitely use aluminum foil or something like that if you prefer. So I'm going to try my best here to just get about half of this marinade. We want to save half of it to toss with the broccoli. The broccoli will take a little bit less time to cook. So we're going to start off by cooking only the potatoes. The chicken and the broccoli both take a little bit less time to cook. So we're going to give the potatoes a little bit of a head start in the oven and then go ahead and add the broccoli and the chicken after the potatoes have been in for about 15 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and grate a little bit of salt over these potatoes. And I think that's about half the marinade left. So we're going to go ahead and spread these potatoes out in an even layer on this cookie sheet here. I'm going to leave the same bowl out, and I'm going to use this to toss our broccoli with the rest of the marinade. So let's go ahead and get our potatoes spread out as evenly as we can. So I'm going to go ahead and pop these potatoes in the oven for 15 minutes. So while our potatoes get started cooking, I'm going to go ahead and chop the head of broccoli into florets. I'm just going to stick it all in the same bowl that we just tossed our potatoes in. I also grabbed my chicken out of the fridge just to let it sit on the counter for a couple minutes just to take a little bit of that edge off, the edge of the chill off. So our potatoes have been in the oven for 15 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and pull them out. So as you can see, they're definitely not done yet, but it's time to add the other components of our dinner. So we're going to go ahead and move all these potatoes to one side of the pan so that we can get our other ingredients working on here. So I'm going to pull out our chicken that we've had marinating in here, and I'm just going to arrange this in a single layer on our baking sheet here. Honestly, my sheet pan might be slightly small, or maybe I just cut up too much broccoli. But we'll see how this all cooks. So now that we've added the chicken and the broccoli to the pan along with our potatoes, the recipe says to pop this back into our 400-degree oven and cook it for another 17 to 22 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and set my timer for 15 minutes and check on it, but I'm guessing it's probably going to need closer to the full time. So our first sheet pan dinner is officially in the oven. I'll meet you back here when it's done and show you the final result. So I let this cook for the full 22 minutes and it looks and smells really good. Now one thing I will mention, you can see that the chicken, if I move this around a little bit, you can see that the chicken did give off a fair amount of juice. I think that will give the vegetables some really good flavor. But if you wanted to avoid any of the chicken juices kind of mingling with the vegetables at all, it is possible that it could interfere with them being quite so crispy. In that case, you may want to cook your chicken on a separate cookie sheet instead. So let's go ahead and plate this up and we are going to give it a try. I think it looks delicious. All right, so I tried a little bit of everything. First impression is that this is really good. I really like that lemon flavor, really comes through. This was really easy to make. Now there were a few extra steps because, and you know, I just realized I didn't even try that with the yogurt sauce. So I'm gonna try another bite with the yogurt sauce and let you guys know how that is. But between the marinade and the yogurt sauce, there were a few steps as far as chopping. But once you get all that in the oven, it's so easy. So I'm going to, at the end of this video, I'll give you guys a little summary of how my family liked all the meals and what our favorites were. But first impression, I think this one seems like a keeper. All right, so I grabbed one more bite of chicken with the yogurt sauce this time. Really good. That yogurt sauce definitely adds something. It's good without it, but I think the yogurt sauce really makes the dish. So I'm going to try this whole meal and I will let you know at the end of this video how we all liked it. So we're getting ready for dinner. It's time to make our second sheet pan dinner. Tonight we're going to be making mini meatloaves with potatoes and green beans. Just like the previous recipe, I'm going to go ahead and link this one down below, so feel free to check the video description and grab this recipe if you're interested. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start mixing up our meatloaves. In this bowl here, I have a slice of bread. Now, normally I probably would have used some of my regular sourdough bread, but this brown bread is what I had on hand. You can see I'm adding 3 tablespoons of milk to it. Just going to go ahead and try to mix this together, this bread and this milk, to make a paste. This is the secret to keeping your meatloaf nice and moist, or so I've been told. So we are going to try this out. Just like the previous recipe, this one's completely new to me, so we'll be finding out together how good it is. Now this bread, as I said, I would probably normally use just a regular sourdough white bread. I'm kind of experimenting with some brown bread recipes because I'm already thinking ahead to Thanksgiving, and I think I'm going to try homemade stuffing this year. I want to have a mix of white bread and brown bread in the stuffing. So I'm trying out some recipes to try to get a good idea for that. So if you have any good brown bread recipes, go ahead and leave those in the comments for me because I'd love to see them. So it looks like our milk and our bread are pretty well mashed together. So we're going to go ahead and set this to the side. In this bowl here, I'm going to go ahead and mix together a 1/4 cup of ketchup and 2 tablespoons of mustard. So that's incorporated. We're going to go ahead and set that to the side. Grab back the bowl with our bread and milk. This is where we're going to mix up our meatloaf. So to our bowl here, we're going to go ahead and add a pound of ground beef. We're going to add 1/2 teaspoon each of onion powder, garlic powder, and salt. We're also going to go ahead and add some fresh cracked pepper. The recipe says 1/2 teaspoon of this, but I'm not really going to measure it. We'll just put a couple grinds of pepper in there. We're going to add a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. I tend to go a little heavy on the Worcestershire because I think it adds a really good flavor to things. We're going to measure out 1/2 cup of cheddar cheese. And we're going to grate up about a 1/4 cup of fresh Parmesan cheese. Well, we went a little over on the Parmesan, but I think we probably won't have any complaints. We're going to add our Parmesan right into the meatloaf. Let's make sure we get all of these shreds. Going to add in 1 beaten egg. So last thing we're going to add is 1/2 of this ketchup mixture here, and the other 1/2 will spread on top of the meatloaves while they cook. Now I find when I'm making anything like meatloaf or meatballs, really the only way to really get it to mix properly is to use my hands. I know a lot of people don't really like that, and honestly, it's not my favorite thing either. But I think it's the quickest and most efficient way to get it to mix. And you don't want to overmix because that can make your meatloaf or your meatballs be tough. So now, just to make sure that I get our meatloaves as even as possible, I'm just going to kind of score this mixture into quarters. I'm going to work with 1/4 at a time and just shape out 4 mini meatloaves. So I've got my mini meatloaves shaped and set up on my sheet pan. I'm just going to take the rest of my ketchup mixture and I'm just going to go ahead, use a basting brush and brush this. I'm going to evenly distribute it between my 4 meatloaves. So I've gotten my oven preheated to 375 degrees. My meatloaves are set up on the pan. Now I've taken my potatoes. I have a mix of red and gold potatoes from my garden here. I chopped them up and tossed them with some olive oil, salt, and pepper. We're just going to go ahead and lay those in the center of the cookie sheet. Now, I do think that this would probably be really good with sweet potatoes too. I have not harvested my sweet potatoes yet, so regular potatoes are what we had. So we're going to go ahead and add these to our sheet pan. Now this recipe actually called for broccoli. I'm going to use green beans instead because the sheet pan recipe that we made a couple days ago used broccoli, so I want something a little bit different. Because green beans take a little bit less time to cook, I'm going to go ahead and get this started in the oven, and I'm going to pull it out in about 20 minutes and add my green beans then. While our meatloaves and potatoes get a head start cooking, we're going to go ahead and prep the green beans. So we're going to go ahead and get these green beans trimmed up, and I'm just going to toss them right in the same bowl that we just had our potatoes in. So unfortunately, these green beans are not from my garden. My garden green beans are pretty much done, pretty much on the way out. So these are store-bought green beans, but I think they will be almost as good. So the green beans are all prepped. Just like we did with our potatoes, we're going to toss these with a little bit of olive oil, salt, and pepper. And then when the meatloaves and potatoes are about halfway done cooking, we're going to add the green beans in for about the last 20 minutes or so of cooking. So I'm going to go ahead and add these green beans to the pan. And then we're going to pop this back in the oven for about another 20 minutes until everything is done. So I just pulled this meal out of the oven. I will say that it looks and smells really good. I'm going to let you know at the end of the video how we liked this, but so far I'm thinking it looks promising. Alright, so we've got dinner all plated up. I'm going to sneak just a tiny taste test so I can let you guys know how it is. So I think this is really good. The meatloaf has a lot of flavor. Stayed nice and moist, so I think our secret trick with the bread and the milk really worked. So I'm going to go ahead and link this recipe for you guys. So if you're looking for something really quick and easy, give this a try. Welcome back, friends. It is time to make the third dinner in our sheet pan dinner series. Today we're going to be trying out another new recipe, and today it's going to be Greek chicken and vegetables. I'm super excited for this one, but as I said, never made it before, so we'll be finding out together. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and preheat the oven to 425 degrees and let that preheat while we mix up our marinade. We're going to go ahead and mix up all our marinade ingredients together in this bowl. I'm going to start with ½ a cup of olive oil. All right, to our marinade here, we're going to go ahead and add in 4 cloves of chopped garlic. We also need some lemon juice in this recipe. The recipe did not actually call for the lemon zest to be included in this marinade, but I'm going to go ahead and zest the lemon in here anyway, because I think a little bit extra lemon flavor won't hurt anything. It'll only improve it. Next, I'm going to go ahead and juice this lemon into our marinade as well. Just going to roll it first, break up the cells. Makes it a little bit easier to get all the juice out of. I always, when I'm juicing a lemon, even though I'm using a juicer, I always like to juice it over a strainer just in case some seeds escape. It's a lot easier than fishing them out later. So I'm just going to go ahead and juice this lemon in here. The recipe calls for 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. This is a pretty small lemon. I'm not sure if I'm going to get a full 3 tablespoons out of it, but if not, I'll top it off with some fresh squeezed bottled lemon juice that I have in my fridge. So I did get pretty close to 3 tablespoons of lemon juice from that lemon, but I'm going to add just a splash more of this fresh squeezed lemon juice too, just in case. I think it was slightly shy. Then we're going to go ahead and add that lemon juice right into our olive oil garlic mixture. So into our marinade here, I'm going to also add a teaspoon of dried thyme leaves, teaspoon of dried oregano. This is from my garden. As you can see, it's a little bit uncrushed. So we're going to go ahead and crush this as we add it in. Also a teaspoon of kosher salt, a teaspoon of Dijon mustard, and I just realized that the recipe actually says 2 teaspoons of oregano, not 1. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little pinch more. Honestly, I was a little bit generous with that first teaspoon. It was probably more like a teaspoon and a half. So we'll just add a little pinch more to this. We're just going to add a couple fresh grinds of cracked pepper too. So we're just going to go ahead and whisk this marinade up. So we want our chicken to marinate in this while the oven finishes preheating and while we chop up our vegetables. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure out about 1/3 of this marinade and put it in a separate bowl. We're going to reserve that to flavor our vegetables, and about 2/3 of the marinade we're going to leave here for our chicken to marinate in. So the recipe actually calls for 6 chicken thighs. Since we have 4 people in my family, I'm going to go ahead and make 8 so that everyone gets 2. So I'm just going to get these chicken thighs in this marinade. We're going to let them sit and marinate while we prep the vegetables. We'll just get these tossed with the marinade so they can develop some really nice flavor. Chicken thighs are a great option for something like a sheet pan meal because they have a higher fat content than chicken breast, which helps them stay moist and not to get overcooked as easily. So when you have multiple things that you're cooking on a sheet pan that you're trying to have all be ready at the same time, sometimes it can be helpful to be cooking a meat that's a little more forgiving than something as lean as a chicken breast. So we've got our chicken thighs marinating in here. We're just going to set these to the side and we're going to go ahead and prep our vegetables. So for vegetables in this sheet pan dish, we are going to chop up a couple peppers. The recipe calls for 1 yellow bell pepper. I have these Corno de Toros from my garden here. My yellow one's a little bit small, so I'm going to go ahead and add this red one in too. So we'll do both of those. I've got a zucchini and a yellow squash, as well as a red onion. And my tomatoes from my garden are pretty much done producing, so I did have to get a package of store-bought tomatoes. So we're going to go ahead and get these all chopped and set up on the sheet pan. So I've got all our vegetables arranged on the sheet pan. The yellow squash was actually a little bit overripe and kind of seedy inside, so I ended up not using it. My chickens will get a wonderful treat with that instead. So we're going to take the 1/3 of the marinade that we reserved from marinating our chicken, and we're going to toss all these veggies with it. Just going to make sure everything's nicely coated so our veggies have lots of delicious flavor. So now that our veggies are all coated and arranged on the baking sheet, we're going to take our chicken and we're just going to nestle the thighs mixed in with these vegetables here. Then as soon as our oven finishes preheating to 425, we're going to go ahead and pop this in the oven for 30 minutes. So this meal is supposed to cook for a total of 45 minutes, but we want to cook it for about 30 minutes. And then what we're going to do is pull it out of the oven. We're going to sprinkle it with a little bit of feta cheese and pop it back in the oven for another 15 minutes. The recipe actually calls for also adding black olives at that time. We don't really like olives, so we're going to go ahead and leave that out of the recipe, but you can definitely feel free to add olives for the last 15 minutes too. So we are just going to eat this meal along with some, and there, my oven's ready. So we're just going to go ahead and eat this meal alongside some focaccia bread that I made earlier today. So our Greek chicken and vegetables are in the oven cooking. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take advantage of the time that these are in the oven, and I'm going to do a little bit of meal prep for tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to be making the 4th sheet pan meal in this series, and tomorrow is going to be a really busy, hectic day for me. So what I'm going to do while my chicken's in the oven, I'm going to go ahead and get a couple steps prepped for the meal tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to be making something I'm really excited about that looks delicious, and that is honey mustard pretzel crusted chicken. Hopefully I got that name right. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to go ahead and prepare the honey mustard sauce, and we're also going to go ahead and prepare the pretzel crust for the chicken. So when it comes time to actually make this tomorrow, I'll already be a couple steps ahead and dinner will be even easier to throw together. So the first thing we're going to get started prepping is our honey mustard sauce for tomorrow. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a couple changes to this recipe just based on the ingredients that I have on hand. I think they'll be great substitutions, and I think it'll still be really delicious, but I just want to let you know I am making a couple changes. Now both this recipe and the Greek chicken recipe that I have in the oven right now, all of these recipes will be linked in my video description. So if you want to go back and find these recipes as they're originally written, that's where you find them. So we're going to start making our honey mustard sauce with 3/4 of a cup of mayonnaise. Because this is meal prep and I'm basically making it for tomorrow, I'm going to go ahead and make this in a Tupperware container so that I can stick it in my fridge and it'll be ready for me tomorrow. And I realized I just threw my mayonnaise spoon in the sink, so I'm going to have to get another one to scrape out this cup. I'll be right back. So to our mayonnaise, we are going to add 1/4 cup of honey. This honey is a little bit crystallized. This had been sitting in my garage for a little while, so I'm going to have to go ahead and scoop this out with a spoon. You know, honey, as long as you store it properly, never actually goes bad. Even if it crystallizes, you can still heat it up and it still be completely fine to use. So even though, as you can see here, this is a little bit crystallized, it's not quite so smooth, this will still taste just as good. This will still be just as good in our recipe. So let's go ahead and add this honey right into our mayonnaise. Now this recipe calls for actually 2 types of mustard. It calls for 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard and 2 tablespoons of yellow mustard. I only have Dijon on hand, so I'm just going to go ahead and use all Dijon mustard. I think that'll be completely fine. So 4 tablespoons, of course, is equivalent to 1/4 cup. So we're going to go ahead and measure out 1/4 cup of this Dijon mustard and add that right into our sauce. Add that right in. The last substitution that I'm going to make is this. This recipe calls for a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar and a teaspoon or 1 to 2 teaspoons of hot sauce. I am going to replace both of those ingredients with this. This is brine from some cowboy candy or pickled jalapenos that we made recently. And this is almost completely apple cider vinegar. But because I kind of boiled the jalapenos in it, it has a little bit of heat from the jalapenos too. So I'm just going to take just over a tablespoon of this brine. We're going to use that to substitute for both the cider vinegar and the hot sauce and mix it up into our sauce here. Because this brine does have some seeds in it, I'm going to go ahead and strain it. We'll add just a little bit more for that teaspoon of hot sauce. I'm going to go ahead and strain it just to catch the seeds because I want this sauce to be really smooth. Let's go ahead and mix this up and then we'll give this a little taste test. Alright, so we've got our sauce mixed up. It looks nice and creamy. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a little bit of a taste test just to see what we can look forward to for tomorrow. That's really good. I think this is going to keep our chicken really nice and moist, and I think it's going to give it some great flavor too. It's got some really nice honey mustard flavor from the honey and the mustard. It's got just a little bit of interest and depth from the cowboy candy brine, and the mayonnaise just keeps it all creamy and keeps it from being overwhelming. So I think this is going to be really good. So I'm just going to go ahead and pop this in the fridge, and this will save us a step tomorrow. So the next step that we're going to prep today to save us a little time tomorrow is to make the pretzel crust for our chicken. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to make about 2 cups of crushed pretzels. I'm just going to put some of these pretzel sticks in this bag here and crush them up with a rolling pin. I'm just going to estimate 2 cups because I don't want to take them out and measure them again once they're crushed up. So we're going to do our best to estimate, and I think we'll be close enough. So I've never made anything with a pretzel crust before, but I'm guessing that what we want is for most of these pretzels to be kind of pulverized into like breadcrumb-like sizes. but I think we do want to keep a few larger pieces as well, just for a little bit of texture. So that's what I'm going for. If you have made anything with pretzel crust before, go ahead and let me know. Is that the right approach, or should I be doing something different? I'll also let you know after we make this meal how it turns out. So for now, we're just gonna go ahead and get a little more aggression out on these pretzels here. So I may have been slightly too rough with these pretzels. There's a couple holes in the bag and they are starting to leak out a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer them to this little Tupperware container here that I have here. And I'm going to store them in here. I chose this one because the chicken is going to end up being dipped into this coating, and this is a perfect size and shallowness to dip chicken in. So we're going to go ahead and mix up our coating right in here and store it in this container. So as you can see, I did have trouble getting some of these pretzels to really break down. You can see I have a mix of really fine pretzels and some pretty big chunks here. So I'm not sure if the food processor is the way to go or using the rolling pin in the bag. This time we did it this way, and we'll see what kind of results we get. So into our pretzels, we're going to add a little bit of seasoning now. The recipe calls for half a teaspoon of dried parsley flakes, which I do not have, so I'm going to use dried Italian seasoning instead. I know that that probably has a little bit of a stronger flavor than dried parsley, but I think it will give us the same idea as what we're looking for. Now we're going to need a quarter teaspoon each of garlic powder, first of all, onion powder, paprika. I am using smoked paprika here. It's a half teaspoon, so we're going to try to get about half of this. Maybe a little pinch more. We're also going to go ahead and season this with a little bit of salt and pepper and get it all mixed up. I think we're going for about a quarter teaspoon or so of salt and pepper, but I'm not really going to measure those. We're just going to grate a little bit right in here. I'm going to go ahead and get this mixed up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and give this a try tomorrow. If it doesn't seem to be coating the chicken well because of some of these larger pieces, then I may end up sticking our mixture in the food processor and just pulse it a couple times to see if we get a better result. I will definitely update you on whatever I end up doing tomorrow. For now, we're going to go ahead and set our coating to the side, and that is one more step for tomorrow already done. All right, so back to tonight's meal, our Greek chicken. It's time to take that out of the oven. So far, I think this is looking really good. So we're going to go ahead and top this with about a quarter cup of crumbled feta, and then we're going to stick it back in the oven for 10 or 15 minutes until the chicken is done. And at this point, if you wanted to add black olives, this would be the time to do that too. We're not going to do that, we're just going to add the feta. I'm going to try to evenly distribute this so all of our food is delicious. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this back in the oven. I'll meet you back here in about 10 or 15 minutes when it's all done and show you the final result. So I just pulled our Greek chicken sheet pan meal out of the oven, and I've got to say it looks delicious. I mean, I think as far as looks, this is probably the prettiest one we've done so far. So I'm going to go ahead and plate this up and give it a try so I can let you guys know if this one's a winner or not. I will say that it looks like the chicken, or actually probably the vegetables in this case, did release quite a bit of juice. So I'm thinking that serving it alongside this bread will be a really good option to kind of soak up some of this extra juice. This looks and smells delicious, so I can't wait to try it. Alright, so this dish looks and smells amazing, but we are going to find out the most important thing, and that is if it tastes as good as it looks. So let's go ahead and give this a try. So first impression, I'd say that this is really good. I think it definitely needs that feta. Now I've only had one bite so far, but I think I might next time add a little bit more feta just to give it a little more saltiness. I will definitely give you my full thoughts at the end of this video when we do a little conclusion. I definitely say you want to serve it with something like this bread to really soak up the juices from the vegetables. But on first impression, this is really good. So we're going to go ahead and eat dinner, and I will meet you back here tomorrow to make another sheet pan meal. So it's the next day. It's time to work on our fourth sheet pan meal, and let me tell you, I am so thankful that we did a little bit of that meal prep yesterday. So now I have my potatoes cut up. So I'm going to toss them with about a tablespoon of olive oil. I'm not really going to measure. Just gonna say that looks like probably about a tablespoon. Going to add a little bit of salt and pepper. Once again, I'm not really measuring. And then we're also going to add in about a tablespoon of this honey mustard sauce. This is the sauce that we prepared together yesterday. We saved ourselves so much time today. So we're gonna go ahead and add this to the potatoes too. These potatoes are going to take a little bit longer than the chicken to cook, so we're going to give them a head start while we prep our chicken. Just want to make sure everything is evenly coated here. So I've preheated my oven to 400 degrees. We're going to put these potatoes in the oven for about 10 minutes. While they're cooking, we're going to prep our chicken because the chicken doesn't take quite as long as the potatoes. Now, this sheet pan recipe did not call for a vegetable on the side. I was originally planning to just throw a quick salad together, but I decided I didn't really feel like doing that since I already have my oven preheated and going. We're going to cook some broccoli as well on a separate sheet pan. So I just tossed this broccoli with a little bit of olive oil, salt, and pepper. We're just going to make roasted broccoli. And I've used my nice handy silicone baking mat to make cleanup super easy. So while our potatoes and broccoli get a head start, we're going to go ahead and prep our chicken. I have here some chicken tenders. We have the pretzel coating that we prepared last night. In this bowl here, you can see I have an egg that I've cracked. To this egg, we're going to add a 1/4 cup of the honey mustard sauce that we made, and that's going to become our egg wash that we're going to use to bread our chicken. So 1/4 cup is the same as 4 tablespoons. Since I already have my tablespoon dirty, I'm just going to scoop out 4 tablespoons right into this egg, and then we're going to whisk it all together. So here I've taken out my chicken tenders and I've patted them dry with some paper towels. So we're just going to take one at a time, dip it first into the honey mustard egg wash mixture, and then into the pretzels. Now I am hoping that the way that it looks like these pretzels are coating pretty well. So I'm thinking this is going to work. Once I have the chicken well coated, I'm going to go ahead and set it on this baking rack just to rest until our sheet pan's ready for it. And I think having the mix of different pretzel crumb sizes seems to be working pretty well. I'll let you know the final verdict on that when we actually sample our meal. So I just pulled the potatoes out. They've been in for about 10 minutes. Push the potatoes to one side of the pan to make some room for the chicken. Then we're just going to add the chicken in a line down this sheet pan here. So now the recipe says to pop this back in the oven for another 12 to 18 minutes until the chicken is done. I'm guessing it's going to be closer to the 18-minute end of that range, but I will check on this at 12 minutes. I'll meet you back here when it's done and we'll see how it came out. So I just pulled dinner out of the oven. We've got our potatoes and pretzel crusted chicken here and our roasted broccoli. Everything looks and smells delicious. Back here, I took the rest of our honey mustard sauce and heated it up a little bit. That's going to be a dipping sauce to go with the chicken. So let's go ahead and plate this up and give it a try. So let's sample this chicken. That's really good. It's got some light honey mustard flavor. I think we're really going to enjoy this. I like the little bit of the crunch from the pretzels. I'm just gonna try a potato too. Really good too. So overall, I'm gonna say that this dish is another winner. But again, I'll meet you back here at the end of this video and we'll recap all the dishes and I'll share with you our favorites. Welcome back, friends. We're ready to do our 5th and final sheet pan meal today. Today we're going to be trying out another new recipe, and that is steak fajitas. This one looks super easy and really delicious. As you can see, my oven's already preheated. I've gone ahead and preheated that to 400 degrees. So I'm just going to prep all our ingredients to get them on the sheet pan. This one looks probably like the easiest of all. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to thinly slice up the steak. Now, I will say I did not get what is probably the right cut of steak. The grocery store, when I went there, was out of probably 3/4 of the cuts of steak there. So I just grabbed a random cut of steak that looked like it might work. I'm going to try it out and hopefully it does. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get this thinly sliced up and stick this in the middle of our sheet pan. So I'm going to try my best to slice this steak up across the grain rather than with the grain, because that makes it a little bit more tender and easier to actually eat. So our steak is all sliced up in the center of our sheet pan. I'm now going to thinly slice 1 onion and 3 bell peppers, the recipe calls for. I've got 3 Corno de Toro peppers here. Ideally, I would have liked to use peppers of all different colors, but none of my yellow ones were ripe right now. So we've just got 3 red, so I'm just going to go ahead and prep all the veggies, get them set up on the sheet pan. Alright, so we've got our steak and veggies all prepped. I'm going to go ahead and drizzle them with some olive oil, and we're going to sprinkle them and toss them with a little bit of taco seasoning. So the recipe says about 2 tablespoons of taco seasoning. I'm just going to kind of roughly measure that. We're just going to go ahead and toss them all together. Try to get this as evenly coated as possible. So I have here a lime that I'm going to go ahead and cut into wedges, and we're just going to add this onto the pan along with our vegetables and our steak. It's going to cook in the oven along with them. Then when we're ready to serve the fajitas, we're going to go ahead and squeeze the lime right over everything to give it a little extra pop. So just go ahead and add these to the sheet pan. And then that's how simple it is. The recipe says just to go ahead and pop this in our 400-degree oven for 10 to 12 minutes. So I'll check on it starting at about 9 minutes, and I'll meet you back here when it's done. In the meantime, while this is cooking, I have some tortillas that I've defrosted. I'm just going to stick them in my oven's warming drawer, let them warm up. So while our fajitas are cooking, I'm going to go ahead and crumble up a little bit of queso fresco to serve with them. I think they'll be really delicious with them. So we're just going to keep it really simple tonight. We're just going to have our steak fajitas and tortillas. We're going to serve with some salsa sour cream. We've got the queso fresco. And I think I'm just going to throw together a quick little salad on the side. So this will probably be the easiest of all of our sheet pan dinners, and hopefully delicious too. So I just pulled our fajitas out of the oven. As you can see, they're steaming quite a bit. They look and smell delicious. Okay, so the key is to squeeze these limes without burning myself. So these tongs seem to be working pretty well. So we are going to make up our fajitas, and we're going to eat these for dinner. I'm going to meet you back here when we're done, and I'm going to recap all the meals and just share a couple of our thoughts on each of the meals that we made over the past couple weeks. So we just finished up dinner. The steak fajitas were delicious. So I know I promised you guys that we would talk a little bit about all of the meals and our favorites, and honestly, they were all delicious. I would definitely recommend all of these recipes. They all had great flavor. I know both of my kids chose for their favorite meal, the first one that we did, the lemon chicken with broccoli and potatoes. That was really good, and honestly, I probably thought that chicken was the best too. But we did also really like the vegetables from the Greek chicken with feta. I think if I was going to make the Greek chicken and feta meal again, which I probably will make it again, I think I would add a little bit more feta to it, because I think it was really good, but I think it could have used probably a little more feta than we used. And honestly, I think they were all really delicious, so we would definitely recommend all of them. So I am going to go ahead and link all of these recipes in the video description. So any that you're interested in trying for yourself, go ahead and give them a try. Thank you so much for joining me and hanging out in my kitchen with me over these past few days. I guess it's probably been maybe 2 weeks since we first started filming this video together. So thank you so much for hanging out with me as we made dinner. I hope that you're inspired to give some of these meals a try. They were definitely all really easy, time savers, and they definitely made cleanup a little bit easier too. So I hope you're having a great day, and I can't wait to see you again soon. I'll see you next time.